Ladies and gentlemen, human beings, for various reasons, have always been on the run. For example, to make our homes better, or simply to enjoy the benefits of just running in and of itself. In the year 776 BC, and in the artifacts that were found, they noticed that people were running back then too. These athletes had a shared value in the psychological preparation in order to compete, or even concerning their gods. According to the Ministry of Education, Culture and Sport in Spain, 15-year-olds and older, or 53.5% of people, practice sports often. Now, those people who actually do sports, some of them have a very clear preference or are partial towards doing exercise outside. Despite what one might think, it's not necessarily soccer, football, or basketball, or tennis, but cycling, swimming, hiking, or even just jogging. These are the most common. Also, according to that same study I just mentioned, there is a preference towards competition. Races in the mountains are maybe the most popular. But what are these races in the mountains? It's a sport, as the name indicates, it's racing in the mountains. Well, sometimes it's a rather rugged terrain that you're jogging on, which is different than marathons, where the terrain is a lot more consistent. The distances are also different. Mountain races, they don't have a pre-established length necessarily. It could be anywhere between 5 to 160 kilometers. In fact, one of the longest races is called the Ultra Trail in English. Since 2000, the number of races hasn't diminished necessarily in Spain. Now, this phenomenon is directly linked to tourism, but it's also to the people who are fans of doing these types of races, because often where the races take places, they weren't really accessible to the general public, but now with the race they are, so there's an interest in that respect. This allows that the local tourism becomes a lot more diversified, because those people who participate in the race bring along with them others that accompany them to those remote locations. There's close to 1,900 races in Spain alone of these mountain races. The issue is that an important part of these mountain races occur in protected areas. Let's take Tenerife, for example, where I live. In 2016, there were close to 60 sporting events held in protected natural environments. Of those, 43 of the 60 were mountain races, like the one called Tenerife Blue Trail, that occurs in a large part of the National Tilde Park. There's about 2,000 people who participate in this race, 500 of which specifically, the Blue Trail is becoming one of the most important races in Spain, not only because of its beautiful setting, but also because it's in altitude the highest. As you know, it goes over the tilde of the apex of the volcano, So it's at a rather high altitude vis-a-vis the sea level. So you need to take a car in order to get to the starting points where the race begins. The rest of the time, in order to see the cyclists, they've created an application that lets you follow the racers using a GPS that locates the exact location on the map. Now, for the more lazy people out there, you can watch it on TV. Canary Island has their own television station. Tenerife's Blue Trail is a mountain race. It starts at sea level and goes up and increases in elevation beyond 3,500 meters. So because of this, you have athletes from over 30 countries. So it's entirely an international event. Increasingly, there are more women competing. Of the women that have competed in this race in the last 3 years is Lorena Ramirez. She's a Mexican woman who became famous running a race of 50 kilometers and winning it in a skirt and sandals. She's actually a member of a tribe from the center of Mexico that are known for being long-distance runners. She herself tells the story that as a child, her brother and her would walk 5 or 6 hours daily. He would often accompany the parents to find food. Then this level of physical activity has really allowed Lorena to be placed in maybe like the starting point of the most important mountain races that are. It's a little absurd, the level of sophistication that's required now for these races. You need to have the latest running shoes, the latest gear, the latest gadget that's on the market in order to measure your velocity. But not her. All she needs is a pair of sandals, actually, to compete. In any case, the experts can all agree that we're not all. We can't all be Lorena Ramirez. Firstly, almost any person can compete in the race. Maybe they can't do the ultra trail, but maybe some of the other legs, the less tougher legs, they could definitely participate in, just about anybody. Now, you definitely need to train with beforehand. You should have, you should be in good health, and you should actually have realistic, achievable objectives before you set out to do this. If you're not really a person that does sports often, you should consider somewhere between 6 to 8 months of training prior to racing. Because whereas if you were running a normal marathon, maybe 2 to 3 months pre-competition training. Unlike Lorena Ramirez, you should invest in a good pair of running shoes that's appropriate for the terrain that you'll be running on. Prior to running this type of race, you should be able to take on a 15 to 20 kilometer race beforehand. It's because so that the effort that we put in to the mountain race will be able to enjoy the scenery because we're able to do that 15 to 20 kilometers.